The Meaning of Maggie, Chapter 9. Mom was a total wreck in the days leading up to Christmas. At night, she cleaned the dickens out of the house, and after that was cleaned, she cleaned the dickens out of the hotel all day. Things got really weird when she started ironing everything. She ironed the curtains, she ironed the dish towels, she ironed all the laundry, even Dad's underpants, and she tried to iron my overalls while I was wearing them. I didn't understand what the big deal was. Dad's mom was visiting, not the Pope. Unless Dad's mom was the Pope, which was highly possible because I didn't really know anything about her. She hadn't visited since I was a little kid, way before Dad's legs fell all the way asleep. All I knew was that she lived in Missouri, which sounded miserable, mostly because Mom said she was a complex woman who was never in a very happy place. I asked why she didn't move to a happier place, like Disneyland or the Jelly Bean Factory, but Mom said it was more complicated than that. And Dad never had much to say about his own mother at all. Whenever I asked about her, he would change the subject and say, "Do you want some pudding?" I would love some pudding. And then I would get his pudding because, well, I was hungrier for butterscotch pudding than I was about information about my own grandmother. Luckily, I knew there was always one person who would give it to me straight no matter what. I found Tiffany folding towels an hour before grandmother was scheduled to arrive. "So what's the deal with the old lady? Do you know anything about her?" "She's crazy." "Oh, yeah?" I was curious. "What kind of crazy?" "I don't know much, but it sounds like she went nuts after Grandpa divorced her when Dad was younger. I think Dad wanted to live with Grandpa, and that's what really pushed her over the edge." I combed through the facts in my head while Tiffany folded. Crazy, huh? It made sense why grandmother would have gone way crazy way back then, but maybe she would be less crazy now that Dad was all grown up. Especially now that Dad and Grandpa didn't talk much. We hadn't seen him in a while either. The last time I saw Grandpa, he tried to steal my nose, and I was traumatized for life. I needed more information. "Do you think she's still crazy?" "Oh, yeah, maybe even crazier." Yikes! That didn't sound promising. "Do you think her crazy is genetic? Will we get it?" Tiffany looked me up and down like a doctor examining a patient. "I think one of us already has." I rolled my eyes and walked away. She was totally kidding, right? I retired to my room and thought long and hard about how our Christmas was being infiltrated by crazy. Our Christmas, which had already been compromised by Mom telling us we were only getting a few gifts because things were tight since Dad left work. Yeah, things were tight, lady, including my pants, which was why I needed new ones. And also, I needed every Tolkien novel because I saw Clyde reading The Hobbit one day, and if it meant he was into short people, then maybe I stood a chance. And I also needed an assortment of candies and chocolates to replenish my for emergencies only stash that was completely depleted. I pulled a book out from under my pillow and tried to forget about Christmas and everything I wouldn't get. I decided to get lost on Prince Edward Island in the pages of Anne of Green Gables. I must have really gotten lost because I didn't even hear grandmother arrive. In fact, I didn't hear Mom calling for me to welcome grandmother. In fact, a double fact, I didn't even hear my bedroom door creak open, but eventually the smell of old lady lotion made me look up. So this was what crazy looked like. She was very small and frail. So frail I imagined her bones were made of dust. So I scooted back, trying not to knock her over. Her brown hair was cut super short, and her face hung like a bulldog's. The strangest part? She sort of looked like an evil dictator, even though I had no reason whether to believe she was evil or a dictator. And the brown eyes I thought we shared were actually much darker than mine, probably muddled by years of crazy this and crazy that. I felt like if I gazed into those long, dark eyes long enough, I would see all kinds of evil things. But I didn't want to see evil things because I was just a kid, so I gazed at the floor instead. I was about to ask her about being crazy, but she spoke first. "Oh, Maggie, what happened to you?" Her voice was low and gravelly, and I must have still been lost on Prince Edward Island because I answered her in my best turn of the century vernacular. "Whatever do you mean, grandmother?" She shook her head. "I'll be speaking to your mother about this." She disappeared out the door, and I jumped up and looked in the mirror. I expected to see a cyclops eye forming on my forehead, or a witch's wart taking over my nose, or at the very least I expected to see chocolate evidence from the Mr. Goodbar I had finished just seconds before she opened my door. but there was nothing. I looked like the Maggie I always looked like. What was she talking about? I headed to the kitchen to investigate and found Mom and Grandmother huddled close in conversation at the counter. Unfortunately, I only caught the tail end of their talk. Well, maybe if you were home with your children, like a mother should be, this wouldn't have happened, Grandmother lectured. My children grew up getting 3 square meals a day. Mom's face looked like it was going to explode when she noticed me. Hey, Maggie, go wash up for dinner. We're leaving in 5 minutes. I pretended to do as she said, but I hung back, waiting to hear the rest. Mom put on her coat. Listen, you're here to see your son, who could really use a mother right now. Why don't you just leave my children to me? She walked away so fast, she almost ran right into me. Busted. She took one look at me and pulled me down the hall to my room, where she slammed the door shut. The nerve of that woman! You'd think after all we've been through she would at least be cordial. I don't know why I put up with it. She's only been here an hour and a half already and she's ruined everything. How am I going to make it through the next 48 hours? Mom collapsed on Tiffany's bed and smushed a pillow over her face. For a second she looked just like Tiffany, bad attitude and all. Then she tossed the pillow to the side, and I could see worry fill her from head to toe. Maggie, I'm so sorry. I shouldn't have reacted like that, especially in front of you. She looked stuck somewhere between angry and hysterical. I just totally lost it, didn't I? I laughed nervously. Yeah. She stood up and got my hairbrush from the dresser. There aren't many people in this world who can get me as worked up as your grandmother. She brushed my hair. It's just that we have two very different definitions of family. I like definitions, so I asked, what do you mean? Well, I want you girls to feel loved every single day, even when I'm not around. I want you to know that I'm thinking about you every single second. And I want you to feel like you can come to me for anything at all. She brushed my hair harder. But your grandmother, parents through fear and guilt and judgment, and Mom, you're brushing really hard. Mom released her death grip on the brush. Sorry, honey. I'm terrible. I shouldn't be talking about your grandma like this. It's okay. I took the brush away. Tiffany already told me she's crazy. She looked genuinely relieved. I'm glad somebody did. Dinner was weird to say the least. We went to some fancy schmancy restaurant that was completely empty because it was Christmas Eve, and duh, families not taken over by crazy ate at home on Christmas Eve. Grandmother ordered everyone's meal, even Mom's, which made Mom's freckles boil. My meal was a garden salad with no dressing, which I thought was just an appetizer. But no, it was my whole meal. My whole meal was a salad with no dressing. As soon as I got home, I went straight for my emergencies only stash in my room. But it was just as empty as it was before. I dug into the bottom of my drawer looking for something, anything, and just then a Rolo rolled out from under a sock. It was a Christmas miracle. I woke up the next morning to Tiffany's sideways face staring at me. Merry Christmas, she whispered. Merry Christmas, I whispered back. I'm scared to go out there. It's like having a stranger take over Christmas. She's not our stranger. I sat up. She's our grandmother. You know what I mean. I did. I knew exactly what she meant. She halfway smiled. But it is kind of fun watching Mom lose it. Yeah, it is, I agreed. We promised each other we wouldn't go out into the living room alone, so I waited for Tiffany while she did whatever she does for an hour in the bathroom. When she finally emerged, done up in red, green, and glitter, we slowly made our way into the living room. Dad was at the table drinking coffee with grandmother, while Mom and Layla were busy in the kitchen fixing a Christmas feast. The tree was ablaze with colored lights and brightly wrapped presents for one and all. I suppressed my urge to dive into the presents immediately and found Mom instead. I squeezed her side. Merry Christmas! She smiled. What took you so long? You have a million presents to open. There weren't a million presents, but there were definitely more than I had expected. Mom had made it sound like we were only getting socks and gruel for Christmas, but I got everything I needed and a few things I didn't, like a brass bookmark from Mom and a Neil Young record from Dad. Even Tiffany and Layla got me a present, which was a Mayfield family first. I unwrapped the tiny box, lifted the lid, and ta-da! Inside was the most perfect pair of fake diamond earrings. They were dainty and understated. Former First Lady Jacqueline Kennedy would have approved. They're so pretty. I held them up to see their sparkle, but my ears aren't pierced. Layla pushed my hair behind my ears. Mom said we could take you to get them pierced. I shivered at the thought. Maybe I'll think about it. My turn. I reached under the tree for the two gifts I'd wrapped especially for my sisters. I could barely contain my excitement as I handed one to Tiffany and one to Layla. They tore open the paper and tried to hide their disappointment. Books, Layla said flatly. Tiffany examined her book like she'd never seen one before. Love poems, to be exact, I said. Elizabeth Barrett Browning wrote them for her husband, who was also a poet. I thought you'd really like them, since they're about love and stuff. Their faces lit up, and Layla gave me a squeeze. This is great, Maggie. Yeah, this doesn't suck entirely, Tiffany agreed. I'm so glad you like them. They're due back to the library next Monday. Don't be late. Mom gets really mad when she has to pay overdue charges. Layla and Tiffany laughed, and Mom and Dad laughed, and Grandmother just sat there because crazy people only laugh to themselves in secret while they're cooking up crazy plans to do all sorts of crazy things. It almost seemed like a normal Christmas. Then Grandmother handed Dad her gift. I honestly wasn't expecting her to give him much. I mean, she'd only given Mom a box of cologne. She'd given Layla and Tiffany lip gloss sets and me a nightgown that was 4 sizes too small. So her gifts were under the top, to say the least. She gave Dad an envelope and watched him open it. Her face looked into. He'll get you all fixed up. He's the best of the best. Dad was silent. We were all silent because Dad was silent. And then Dad flipped. No one is going to fix me up, Mom. Don't you listen? I've told you over and over again. Now drop it. Don't raise your voice at me, Grandmother said while raising her voice. I'm just trying to help. I'm just trying to talk some sense into you. I brought you up to be more responsible than this. You haven't thought through a single thing. Mom, I've done all the research. I've seen all the best doctors. I know what I'm doing. Oh, you do you? Grandmother lost it, even more so than she already had. This is from the man who quits his job out of nowhere. You had 25 years with that company, and you just threw it all away. You can't take care of your family, let alone yourself. That's enough. Dad locked eyes with her, and I mean it. Mom stepped in. Girls, go to your rooms. The three of us stood up together, but Dad wanted us to sit back down. No, stay. Stay. Mom looked worried. Honey, I don't think now is the time to. I'd like to say something to my family. Dad locked his wheels in front of Grandmother. Now, I appreciate your concern, but I am getting the very best care here. Dale and the girls don't know the first thing about taking care of you. If you'd been given the proper care and attention all along, you wouldn't be in this condition. This is just like you. You don't listen, Dad shouted. And then you just say all of these horrible things and you think there are no consequences. Well, I can say horrible things too, Mom. Where have you been? The past 11 years. Where have you been? You hate Dad, but you're just like him. Both of you just ran away. I won't stand for this. Grandmother stood up even though she just said she wouldn't. Not on Christmas. She stormed off. Dad yelled after her. That makes two of us. Grandmother stayed locked in Layla's room the rest of the night. We tried to carry on with Christmas, but it felt super weird. Mom even tried to get Grandmother to come out for dinner, but she refused, and I was glad she did. That meant more peace for my family and more honey-baked ham for me. The next day, Mom took her to the airport before any of us woke up. All she left behind was a bottle of her old lady lotion that I buried in the back of the linen closet, far away from my family, but close enough so if I ever needed to be reminded of what crazy smelled like, I could take a sniff. Before I knew it, it was New Year's Eve and my family was a family again. Mom made us black-eyed peas to eat for luck on New Year's Day, and Dad lined up a stack of records he wanted to listen to as we rang in the new year. And I thought long and hard about my New Year's resolution. The year before, I had resolved to make myself a scholarly triple threat by getting straight A's, perfect attendance, and at least one academic award. I had succeeded effortlessly. But after everything that had happened, I resolved to do something that might have seemed impossible, especially to Dad. I resolved to do something that would take all of my brain, all of my heart, and both my bootstraps pulled all the way up. I resolved to fix Dad. Chapter 10. The first week back to school after Christmas break is always thrilling. But this time I was going to try even more to give it my all. Maybe I was excited to learn more and more so I could get smarter and smarter and closer to fixing Dad. Maybe I just needed a distraction after everything that happened with grandmother. Or maybe I was just the smartest kid in my entire class. Yep, that had to be it. I was on an academic roll. And by Thursday afternoon, my arm was drained of blood by raising it so much. I was about to give my arm a rest and let someone else answer when Mrs. Nickel asked, "Who refused to give up her seat on an Alabama bus?" No one raised their hands. Fools! I eagerly raised mine. Mrs. Nickel sighed. Anyone other than Maggie? I meekly lowered my hand, and Mrs. Nickel called on Mary Winter, the class airhead. After about a million ums, Mary said, "Florence Nightingale? Seriously? Am I the only one who did her homework even when we didn't have homework?" I was just about to redeem my generation by yelling, "Rosa Parks!" when the bell rang. I was up and at 'em the next morning. I'd read 4 chapters ahead in my history book the night before, so I felt confident, knowing I knew more than usual. I was only going to read 2 chapters ahead, but then the civil rights movement took off, and I had to know if Lyndon B. Johnson got his act together. I was zipping my book bag up when Mom unexpectedly appeared at my door. "Why aren't you at work, lady?" "Stop calling me lady," she said with a look. "I took the day off to spend with my girls. How do you feel about a little adventure?" "Well, maybe later. I'm staying after school to clean the erasers." "Why do you do that? Did you get in trouble?" "Trouble? I volunteered. I consider it my civic duty." She looked impressed and worried at the same time. "Okay, well, you're going to miss it today. We're going to play hooky. Doesn't that sound cool?" Was she kidding? It sounded the opposite of cool. I can't skip school. What if I miss a pop quiz or something? Mom held out my coat. "I already checked with your teachers. Missing a day is fine." I objected big time. "No way, Mom!" She pushed me out the door. "This is kidnapping." Next thing I knew, I was bundled up and being forced into the car next to Tiffany, who was already buckled up. Layla was in the front seat. Was she really kidnapping all of us? "I don't want to be kidnapped!" I screamed. Mom looked in the rearview mirror. "It's perfectly legal to kidnap your own children." "We'll let the court of law decide that." I nodded at Tiffany, who was staring at me with her nose wrinkled. "You are so weird." And just like that, we were driving down the highway with the radio blasting on a school day. I gave everyone the silent treatment, mostly because I was mad and partly because when you're kidnapped, you're not supposed to give your captors any reason to dislike you. Layla checked her mascara in the passenger mirror. "Come on, Maggie, cheer up. Today's going to be fun." "How do you know? Have you been conspiring with the enemy?" Mom didn't like that at all. "I'll have you know, Magnolia Jane Mayfield." Uh-oh. She used my whole name. Trouble. "Your sisters and I planned this entire day just for you. So be nice and get excited." How am I supposed to be excited if I don't even know where we're going? Mom pulled into the parking lot lined with giant trees. "We're here, the High Museum of Art." She turned around and smiled. Excited now? The place was huge and overwhelming and totally exciting. "We're going on a full tour of museums today," Mom explained. "This is our first stop, and then we're going to the Atlanta History Center. It's time you saw some real history instead of just reading about it in school. This is awesome! I yelled louder than you're supposed to yell in front of museums. I lowered my voice back to normal. Is Dad meeting us here? No, honey, Mom said. We're going to have a great time. It'll just be us girls. I was skeptical. A girls' day? They better not make me shop for anything, unless it's a Picasso. Mom bought our tickets and we turned through the turnstiles and went back in time. I hadn't thought I was really into art. I mean, the only art we did in art class involved popsicle sticks, but no popsicles, and that just seemed wrong. But this art jumped off every wall. There were so many colors, so many faces, so many naked people I wasn't supposed to see. But Mom said they were like the naked people in National Geographic, so it was okay. Layla loved the Degas dancers, and Tiffany loved the Renoir lady, and I loved the painting of the raspberries that I imagined were sugared like Mom always made them. We oohed and awed for an hour, and then Mom said it was time to go to our next destination. On our way to the car, we passed a wishing well. Layla pushed Mom for coins. Come on, Mom. You have to have a penny in your purse somewhere. Mom's arm disappeared into her bag and came out holding 3 pennies. You're in luck. She handed one to each of us. Make it count. Layla tossed hers in first and probably made a wish about being senior prom queen. Tiffany was next and probably made a wish about being junior prom queen. I handed my penny back to Mom. Here, you throw it. I don't want to. Oh, come on, Maggie. You have to make a wish. I'm pretty sure it's illegal to throw wishes in there and I can't break a law. I'm going to be president one day. How many times do I have to tell you? She laughed. Okay. I'll make a wish. She held on super tight to the penny and let it go behind her without opening her eyes. She looked like she was really wishing hard. She was probably wishing for, I didn't know what Mom wished for, but I didn't want her to give up her wish by telling me. I wanted it to come true, whatever it was. We drove down busy city streets and made our way to the History Center. Inside, I took a deep breath that smelled the way that smart feels. Mom and I walked side by side, and she guided us through the civil rights exhibition, while Layla and Tiffany pretended to pay attention. I remember this. Mom pointed at a picture of Martin Luther King Jr. walking down an Atlanta street surrounded by people. He was a great man. Gone way too soon. Did you go to the parade he was in? I asked. Oh, it wasn't a parade. It was a march on Washington. I didn't go, but I watched it on TV with my dad, and it was so exciting. That time was really electric, you know? I questioned her hippie vocabulary. Electric? Yeah, electric, like alive. Like things were finally changing for the better, even though sometimes it was scary, especially growing up down here. Atlanta was the center of it all because of Dr. King. And living here, you really felt like you were part of it, a part of the change. I searched the photos for electricity and swore I saw a spark here and there. I'm going to make history one day too, you know. Mom smiled. You already are. We walked and walked around some more until our legs were too full of history to walk anymore. So we headed for the car. I couldn't wait to get home and tell Dad all about our day. We piled into the car, and then Mom laid another surprise on me. Guess what? The adventure isn't over yet. I booked us a room at the hotel, and we're going to spend the night in a fancy suite. How's that sound, Maggie? I had to admit it sounded exciting, but it also sounded fiscally irresponsible. I don't know, Mom. Sounds expensive. That's the best part, Mom said. I traded a day off for a room for the night. It's not going to cost a thing. But we don't have our pajamas. You don't give me enough credit, Maggie. I had Layla pack you a bag last night. What? What did you pack for me? I had to know. Don't worry, Layla said. I have your rise and shine nightgown. And what else? And your gigantic old lady underpants. She laughed. I defended my honor. They're not gigantic, okay? I just like having room to move around. When we got to the hotel, I expected Dad to be waiting for us in the lobby, but he was nowhere to be found. When's Dad getting here? I asked. Did you send the fancy hotel limo to get him? It's just for the night, Mom explained. Dad's staying home. He's what? My yell bounced off every inch of marble in the lobby. Shh. Mom lowered her voice. He's fine. David, Dad's very best friend, he works at the airport like Dad and has a mustache like Dad and likes Budweiser and hippie music like Dad, is staying at the house. He's sleeping on the couch. They're probably watching football and yelling at the TV right now. That didn't make any sense. But who's going to make him dinner and finish his ice cream and help him brush his teeth and pick him up and put him in bed? David can do all that, trust me. She grabbed a key from a hand I could barely see over the tall front desk. Now let's go check out our room. We rode up the glass elevator in silence, but the silence was over when Mom opened the door to our room. There are only 2 beds, Tiffany yelled. Mom put our bags in the closet. Yes, you and Maggie are sleeping in one, and Layla and I are sleeping in the other. Great. I shared a room with Tiffany at home, and now I have to share a bed with her here. This was supposed to be a break from the daily grind. And my daily grind had a ponytail and legs that karate kicked at night. When Tiffany lay down on the bed, her giraffe arms and legs nearly took up the whole thing. I'd be lucky if I made it through the night alive. I was going to stay mad, but then Mom made up for it. How about room service for dinner? I snatched the menu out of her hands. I'll take the pancakes and a hamburger and a steak. Mom took the menu back. We're going to pick a couple things and share them. Fine, I huffed in a very unfine way, even though it was actually fine. We ordered 2 hamburgers, 2 orders of fries, and 4 Coca-Colas, and feasted while watching Entertainment Tonight. Like always, I was the last to get in the bathroom. I brushed my teeth and put on my favorite nightgown that Layla packed for me. I had to admit she had good taste. When I walked back into the room, she was just hanging up on the phone. Geez, Layla, can't you spend one whole day away from Bobby? It's not like you can make out through the phone. She threw a pillow at my head. It wasn't Bobby, it was Dad. Hey, call him back. I want to say good night. No, Maggie, Mom said. It's time for bed, and Dad's really tired. We'll see him in the morning. I never understood why a guy who sat down all day was always so tired at night. But I didn't fight her to call him back. I was too tired from all the seeing and thinking. I crawled into bed with Tiffany, who probably rolled over and scared the bejesus out of me. Something's eating your face, I screamed. It's a face mask. It's going to keep me beautiful, she said without moving her lips. I shook my head. Good luck with that. The next day we packed up and headed home after breakfast. I couldn't wait to tell Dad about our adventures. I wanted to be the first to see him, so I ran into the house, rushed down the hall, opened the door, and ta-da! He was sleeping. At 1 in the afternoon, on a Saturday. Sure, I didn't have a reason to believe he wasn't always asleep in the afternoon. Who knew what he did while I was at school? But it seemed strange. I tiptoed over to his bed and he shook awake. Hey, Mags, how was your trip? Did you have fun? His eyes were half awake and half somewhere else, and they weren't smiling like they usually did. His face wasn't smiling either. In fact, he kind of looked like it kind of looked like he was in pain. Something was wrong, really wrong. I looked around the room for his wheelchair and found it locked in place next to the door. There were no new scratches or dings, so I didn't think he'd toppled over again. And there were no dropped forks around his bed, so I knew that wasn't getting him down. Still, whatever had happened while we were away was a big deal. I wanted to yell at him. I wanted to scream. I wanted to know what was going on. But when I brushed the hair out of his eyes, I saw the tire that had taken over his whole face. And I couldn't yell, and I couldn't scream. All I could do was swallow the lump in my throat. I resisted my first instinct, which was to call Mom. I don't know why I didn't. Maybe I didn't want her to see Dad like this. Maybe if only I saw him like this, then I could figure out a way to make him better before anyone else knew. I stopped thinking and followed my second instinct. I leaned over and hugged him. I squeezed him, and when we both let go, I noticed something on his wrist. He was wearing a hospital bracelet. Chapter 11. Dad? I tugged at the hospital bracelet. What is this? My voice was calm, even though my brain was screaming. He could tell I was upset. Okay, you caught me. He called for Mom. Honey, can you come in here? She appeared, and Dad smiled weakly. Why don't we tell Maggie what's going on? I crossed my arms. Yeah, why don't we tell Maggie what's going on? Mom frowned at me. Hey, no attitude, okay? Yes, ma'am. I said under my breath. I crawled in with Dad. Mom pulled the covers up over both of us and sat down on the side of the bed. Dad's doctors thought a new medicine might make him stronger, and he had to get it right away. So that's why we left in such a hurry. But why didn't you just tell me that? There wasn't any time, Mom said. What kind of medicine? A really powerful one. It's kind of a steroid, Dad said. Aren't those illegal? Are you breaking the law? No, no, Mom said. These are the safe and legal kind. They're going to give Dad a little pick me up. And there might be a few side effects. What's a side effect? It's something bad that can pop up when you're trying to make things better, Mom explained. Like how my stunted growth is a side effect of sharing a room with Tiffany. Mom shook her head. You're growing just fine, Maggie. I meant my emotional growth, Mom. Dad laughed, which was nice to hear, but I wasn't finished. So why did he go to the hospital? Well, this medicine is very special and can only be given at the hospital. And it takes a long time to get all the medicine, so Dad stayed in the hospital overnight. Why didn't we stay with him? Dad looked down. He straightened his left fingers with his right fingers, and it looked like he was holding his own hand. I didn't want you girls to worry. I put his hand in mine. But that's our job. He squeezed my hand with his. No, Maggie, that's my job. I felt scared in kind of the same way I'd felt when we found Dad on the floor, and again when he dropped his fork. And I hated that feeling. I hated it more than I hated anything in the world, including Brussels sprouts and acorn squash. Man, I hated acorn squash. I scooted over to get out of the bed. I'm going to get Layla and Tiffany. They should know about this. Mom stopped me. They already do. I didn't understand. How? We just got home. I told Tiffany this morning, and we told Layla the night before. That's when I pitched a fit. I pitched a fit even though I'd never pitched a fit before. Sure, I threw tantrums here and there as a kid, but mostly Tiffany was the fit pitcher in our family. Every other day and sometimes hours she'd scream, Why can't I stay out past 10? Why can't I dye my hair pink? Why can't I join a weirdo band of gypsies and travel from seedy town to seedy town with a muscle man and bearded lady? Okay, she never shouted that last one, but I could see it coming. She was always filled with so much teenage rage, and I never wanted to be like her. I never wanted to lose my mind. Plus, I was more mature than her. And grown-ups don't fight, they debate. But the anger I felt then wasn't debatable. It was boiling, and I couldn't stop it from exploding. I yelled one yell after the next. Why did they keep this from me? Why did they blatantly lie to me? Why did they tell Layla and Tiffany everything and me nothing when I was the one with the perfect GPA? I was the one with off the charts critical thinking skills. I was the one who was going to change the whole wide world in one day. I was going to be president, to be commander in chief, and they wouldn't even let me be a leader in my own house? You're right, Maggie, Mom finally admitted. You're totally right. I wasn't finished. I don't even know who you two are anymore. Don't be so dramatic, Mom said. Parents make mistakes sometimes. Tell me about it, I yelled in a tone. I wrapped my scarf tight around my neck and got back into bed with Dad. I unfolded his arm to get into his nook so we could watch whatever movie I wanted, because I deserved to get whatever I wanted. When I pulled on his arm, he winced, and I saw that on the opposite side of his elbow, his arm was the most purple I'd ever seen. I bit my lip. Does it hurt? A little, but I'm a big, tough guy, remember? I laughed even though I didn't want to laugh. It was what I liked most about Dad. He was funny, even when he wasn't supposed to be. I pulled myself close to his side. I love you, Dad. He used his unpurple arm to pull his purple arm around my shoulder. I love you more, Maggie. I was mad, to say the least. Every member of my family had lied to me. They intentionally kept a secret from me, an important secret that so many others knew before me. Dad knew, Mom knew, Layla knew, Tiffany knew, David knew, the nurses who took care of Dad knew, the doctors who listened to Dad's heart knew, the parking lot attendant at the hospital knew, the hospital bracelet maker knew, the Garfield Band-Aid giver knew. Would I ever be able to trust any of them again? I sulked and pondered and wondered and ignored my family for days and days. Mom tried to make amends with chocolate. I made a batch of Toll House cookies just for you. Want one? I shook my head, escaped into my room, and waited for the coast to be clear, and then belly crawled into the kitchen, stole two from the still warm plate, and escaped again. What? I didn't see any reason why the cookies should suffer. It wasn't their fault she couldn't be trusted. Dad tried to trick me with TV. Oh, wow, he yelled. My favorite movie, Pippi Longstocking, is on. I wish someone would watch it with me. No dice. I didn't need Pippi's problems. I had my own. Tiffany didn't even try to talk to me, which wasn't a surprise. We were in a war long before this. It was a lot like the Cold War, only it wasn't really cold, because Dad always kept the thermostat at a balmy 78 degrees. I was sure I wouldn't ever talk to any of them again. I was prepared to secede from our family and start my own across the masking tape border in my room. In fact, I was working on the design of my new family crest when Layla came in and collapsed on my bed. I need to know everything you know about Atticus Finch. Good luck. I turned away from her and focused all my attention on my notebook. Come on, she pleaded. It's life or death. I raised an eyebrow. Okay, it's life or death for my English paper. Have you even read To Kill a Mockingbird? It's probably the easiest book in the world to understand, even for you. Yes, I read it, and I even understood it. I'm not an idiot, you know. I kind of felt bad for implying she was. Come on, help me. I just finished my horrible biology homework, and I don't have any brain power left for this. She looked genuinely desperate, so I decided to help her. What do you need to know? Ah, yes, you're the best. She hugged me. I need to write about 3 traits that make Atticus Finch a strong and complex character. That's easy. Is your pencil sharpened? She nodded yes, and I stood like all great orators stand, and I clasped my hands behind my back, like all great orators do, and I paced because great orators pace. First things first, Atticus Finch was a man of great integrity. He wasn't afraid to do something he believed in, even if it meant putting everything on the line. Not only did he have integrity, he believed that every man should. That's why he defended Tom Robinson. This is great, Maggie, Layla said without looking up from her notebook. Keep going. He wasn't a showman or a showboater or a show anything else. He was a quiet hero, which you don't come across often, you know. Heroes are always these big deal guys with muscles who love talking about themselves, but not Atticus. He was above all them. She nodded. Cool, I just need one more. Well, I guess if there was one more thing to say about him, it would be he taught by example. Jem and Scout learned he always had honest intentions, even if he wasn't always honest with them. He was just the most stand up guy ever. I can see that, she nodded. He seemed like a really cool dad. But don't tell Dad I said that. He always says he's the coolest. I shook my head with certainty. Our dad has nothing on Atticus Finch. Yeah, I don't think Atticus Finch ever got arrested for stage diving. She laughed. Even if he did, he would never have told his kids about it. Dad's all about the TMI. TMI? I asked. Too much information. That's great. Yeah, Dad is all about the TMI. But come on, you have to admit, he's pretty brave. I shrugged. I guess? But she didn't let it go. Maggie, you're too scared to get your ears pierced. Look what's happening to him. It's way scarier. Just think about it. No one had ever really told me to think. Because, well, I was always thinking. Telling me to think was like telling me to breathe. It was like telling my hair to grow, my heart to beat, my bones to get bonier. But I took a moment and I thought long and hard about what she said. And my thoughts led me to the truth. I had been so preoccupied with what happened to me, how I had been lied to, betrayed, and backstabbed by my own family. It consumed me so much that I hadn't, not even once, thought about what was happening to Dad. I considered all the brave people throughout history and literature. What did Dad have in common with them? Abraham Lincoln and Dad both had unruly heads of hair, but the comparison stopped there. Dad and Franklin Roosevelt were both in wheelchairs, but Dad didn't end a world war from his. The closest he ever got to revolution was demanding that Mom stop trying to switch him to decaf. But when I thought about it some more, Dad did have something in common with all of these bravest of brave people: Abraham Lincoln, Franklin Roosevelt, Anne Frank, Dr. King, Rosa Parks, Amelia Earhart, Atticus Finch, and my dad, Dan Mayfield. They never, ever gave up. I thought about things a lot, and maybe it was time for me to let it all go. Maybe it was time to forgive my family. Yes, Dad had lied to me, and that was a huge deal, but he had apologized. Mom had too. I just wasn't ready to hear it. And I couldn't be mad at Layla because she was just an innocent bystander. But I could be mad at Tiffany because, well, I was always mad at Tiffany. Layla stood up to leave. Thank you so much, really. You saved my life. Anytime. I wrapped my scarf around my neck and followed her out of my room and into the living room where Dad was on the phone. He sounded better than ever. Yeah, Doc, I'm feeling good. I don't think I'll win any bodybuilding competitions, but I definitely feel stronger. I gave him a smile, my first one in 4 days, and he smiled back. Then I headed for the kitchen where Mom was making dinner. Hey, Mom. I made my peace. What's up? She looked surprised. She finally speaks. I half smiled. Is there anything I can do to help? I meant in life, but she thought I meant for dinner. Yeah, you can set the table. Dinner's almost ready. I reached for the plates, and Mom helped me carry all 5 of them down to the counter with one hand. I always forget how strong she was. I gathered the forks and knives, and for the first time in days, I didn't want to throw them at anybody. I wasn't so angry anymore, but there was something I needed to know. Hey, Mom. The other day at the museum, I hesitated. Suddenly, I felt like I was asking too much, but I really needed to know. What did you wish for at the wishing well? Her eyes told me everything. I knew she had wished for the medicine to work. Go get your sisters, okay? It's time to eat. I knocked on Layla's door and she actually answered. Hey, Maggie, come in. This had never happened in my whole life. Layla had never let me into her room. I walked through the door and the smell of hairspray and perfume almost knocked me out. There were magazines all over the place, and torn out pictures of rock stars taped all over the walls. The rock stars were wearing just as much makeup as Tiffany did. Clothes were everywhere, and I mean everywhere. I tiptoed away from a bra that was freaking me out. It's time for dinner. She fixed her rogue hair in the mirror. I'll be right there. Hey, I knew what I wanted to say, but I had a hard time figuring out how to say it. You didn't really need my help with your homework, did you? She turned and wrapped my scarf in a fancy bow around my neck. Of course I did. You're the smartest girl alive, right? Well, I stared at my feet and spoke under my breath. Maybe not all the time. All 5 of us dined on dinner, and all 5 of us spoke, even me. It was nice. But it wasn't like the good old days, and I was starting to think it would never be again. I looked over at Dad and saw that the most purple of purple bruises was finally beginning to fade away. It reminded me that I wasn't any closer to fixing Dad. I knew eventually the bruises would disappear completely, but the memory of it wouldn't. I'd always remember that purple. But I wasn't going to lose hope. I wasn't going to give up, because brave people never ever give up. Chapter 12. But boy, did I wish I could give up February. I hated February. It was always gloomy and cold, and all anybody talked about was love and smooching and blah, blah, blah. I hated it. Sure, I got a giant yellow Whitman sampler from Dad. Sure, Layla and Tiffany would let me have theirs. Sure, there was candy at school every day, but there were also flowergrams, and I hated flowergrams. Never heard of a flowergram? I hadn't either before middle school, but turns out they're a form of torture, where boys pay $1 to have the booster club deliver a flower to the girl of their dreams during homeroom. And so what? I probably wasn't going to get one. I probably wasn't ever going to get smallpox either, and I considered myself lucky. And so what? Maybe I thought Clyde might send me one after we totally had a moment over Neil Young, even though we hadn't really talked since. So it was totally fine that he didn't. He probably thought they were stupid. Of course he did. God, we were perfect for each other. The big delivery day was Valentine's Day, and I made sure not to wear pink or red because I knew every girl in school would be wearing pink or red. So I wore Dad's Bruce Springsteen shirt instead. I didn't need love, I had America. When I got to my locker, Mary Winter, Turns out, whenever Mary Winter was called on in class, her answer was always Florence Nightingale, even in math. I guess she knew statistically speaking, she'd be right eventually. Mary Winter was holding a bouquet of flowergrams, like they were a Nobel Peace Prize or something. She fixed her hair in a full length locker mirror and proceeded to ruin my life. Happy Valentine's Day, Maggie! How many flowergrams did you get? I don't believe in flower murder, I said. Oh, well, I have a bunch if you change your mind. You can have one of mine. She tried to give me a carnation, but I shooed it away. No thanks, she insisted. Come on, take this one. It's so pretty. She read the tag, which was amazing because I didn't think she could read. It's from some boy named Clyde. Do you know him? Holy what? I slammed my locker door and ran down the hall with a knife in my heart. The rest of the day was a blur of one devastation after the next. First the flour, and then the cafeteria ran out of chocolate milk, and then I got a 94 on my French test instead of my anticipated 98, and then the hand dryer in the bathroom was broken, and I had to dry my hands on my pants, which left behind an embarrassing wet spot that I didn't want to talk about. And then, to top it all off, at the end of the day, that stupid flower was stuck in my locker with a note from Mary that read, From me to you, Happy Valentine's Day, girl. Girl? Don't call me girl, girl. I am a woman, a future world leader. You would never call Margaret Thatcher girl, would you? Certainly not to her face, on the worst day of her life. When I got home, I didn't even want to catch up on current events with Dad. He usually told me all about the news of the day, but I couldn't handle any more news. I had enough to deal with. So I went straight to my room and locked the door. But then I realized my Whitman sampler was on the table, so I went back out, got it, ignored Dad's pleas to share it with him, went back to my room and locked the door again. I collapsed on my bed and cried, and ate the messenger boy chocolate, and then cried some more, and ate the cashew cluster, and then cried some more, and thought I was going to throw up, so I ate the mint cream because mint soothes your tummy. Why hadn't Clyde sent me a flowergram? Was it my hair? No way, I had perfect hair. Was it my face? Impossible. I had Dad's face and he was the best looking person ever. Was he intimidated by my intelligence? Blinded by my ambition? Maybe it was the quarter inch I had grown over Christmas. I was spiraling farther down into a deep, dark place when someone knocked on my door. It wasn't a low knock, which meant it wasn't Dad, and it wasn't Lila or Tiffany because they were on dates. Of course they were on dates. It had to be Mom. I opened the door. She looked excited. Maggie, someone just called for you. What? I yelled. Was it Clyde? No, it was your principal. Your student of the month. Great. I was student of the month for the month I hated with every fiber of my being. I turned and fell back onto my bed into a sea of chocolate wrappers. Mom raised an eyebrow as she took in the mess. Are you okay? Dad said he thought something was wrong. Who's Clyde? Is this about him? I smushed my face into a pillow. He's no one! She sat on the bed without asking permission. Do you want to talk about it? I smushed my face farther into the pillow. No, I just want to be alone with my thoughts. Okay, well, I'm sure Tiffany won't be home for a while, so you'll have the room all to yourself. Great. The last thing I wanted to think about was Tiffany sucking face with some boy. I turned my head so I could breathe and watched her pick up my clothes off the floor like moms always do. Mr. Shoemaker said the student of the month breakfast is Friday. Remember what a great time we had last year? She was right. We did have a great time last year. We'd hobnobbed with two of my favorite teachers who had gone on and on about how I was their favorite student and how they were going to miss me, and I'd reminded them to remember me when 60 Minutes called to interview them during my election. It had been a banner morning. Plus, there were assorted jams and muffins and toast and croissants, which are French for delicious. I sat up. You'll be there, right? Wouldn't miss it for the world. After she left, I pulled up my bootstraps and reminded myself of my mantra: career first, love second. Forget Clyde. Forget Mary Winter. I would be in the Ivy League soon, and they would be in some dumber league, like the Weed League or the AstroTurf League. I had to remember that being student of the month was a really big deal and never got old enough, even though it never got old, even though I won it every year. One year I even won twice when the girl who was supposed to be Student of the Month got caught cheating on a pop quiz. Her loss was my victory. I just needed to move on and stop being so crazy, especially since there were crazy genes lurking in my bloodstream. I didn't want to activate them. Future world leaders couldn't be crazy. The next few days were tough, but I muscled through, and I avoided Mary Winter and Clyde and any thought of the two of them together. And by Friday, my focus was restored, and I was ready to receive my Student of the Month honor with pride. I rushed off the bus and into school and saved Mom and me the very best seats in the cafeteria. Mom had to go to work first, but she swore she'd meet me in the lunchroom at 9 o'clock on the dot. The tables were covered in fancy white crepe paper, and vases of flowers sat in the middle of each one. Vases of flowers that included carnations, which I hated less when they were honoring achievement, not love. I waited and waited as the other parents piled in, and I got worried my backpack wasn't going to be enough to hold her place. What was taking her so long? Was she stuck in traffic? Did she forget? No, she would never forget. Finally, just as Mr. Shoemaker was closing the door, one last person arrived. But it wasn't Mom. It was Layla. She rushed over to the table, picked up my backpack, and took Mom's seat. My jaw dropped. And not just because I was opening it for a croissant. She unfolded her napkin in her lap and whispered, "Did I miss anything?" Did she miss anything? What the heck was I missing? "Where's Mom?" I hissed as I pulled the jam bowl away from her. "She's stuck at work, so she sent me. You're not mad, are you?" "Mad? Mad? Of course I'm mad," I yelled. "Mom said she wouldn't miss this for the world. What was she, some kind of world hater?" "Shh, Maggie. She couldn't make it, so I'm here, okay?" "This is great. This is just great." Mr. Shoemaker started the breakfast with an orange juice toast to me and my fellow students of the month, each from a different grade. He called each of us up one at a time to get our certificate, and everyone paused and posed for a picture, and their moms and dads applauded their hands off, and I was the only one without a parent applauding. Geez Louise! I ate my strawberry jammed biscuit in silence while Layla mingled with the parents. She laughed at their unfunny jokes and answered all their questions and looked perfect, and on my second grape jammed biscuit, she turned to me. "This is great, Maggie. You're doing really well. Way better than me. I hated middle school." "You hate all school," I said with a perfectly timed roll of my eyes. "That's not true," she defended herself. "I like high school, but in middle school I just got made fun of." I actually stopped chewing and looked at her. "Yeah, right." She took the teeniest amount of orange marmalade and spread it on her toast. "I did. You don't remember me back then. I guess you were really little. I was so skinny I looked like a skeleton, and the kids were so mean, and I begged Mom to let me stay home from school every day." "Really?" "Really," she said. "Well, when did you get so popular?" "I'm not popular," Layla said. "Actually, everyone thinks I'm a goody-goody." Now I was interested. "No way." "Yes, way. I may not be as good of you at school, but I do try really hard. I just really suck at math, in science, in English," she continued, "in history," she added, with a laugh, "and French. I can help any time, you know." "Thanks, that'd be great." The weirdest part? She was starting to feel less like my bossy big sister who hogged the bathroom and constantly left the curling iron on. She felt more of a friend who was also a bossy big sister who hogged the bathroom and constantly let the curling iron on. Layla checked her makeup in her hand mirror, and I nudged her with my elbow. "Hey, thanks for coming. I'm sure you didn't want to." "Thanks for letting me stay. It was fun," she said. "Mom's really bummed she missed it, you know." "I guess," I muttered. "I'm serious, Maggie." She lifted my chin up and took a good look at me. "Hold on a sec." She pulled out a tiny jar from her bag and dotted some strawberry lip gloss on my lips. "Yep, that's definitely your color. Do you want it?" "Really?" She folded my fingers over the jar of gloss. "It's all yours, but you have to pinky swear you'll wipe it off every day before you get home from school." I wrapped my pinky around hers and squeezed. "I don't want to be the one to corrupt you," she winked. "That's Tiffany's job." By the final bell, I had gone a little crazy, but not like on Valentine's Day. I had gone a little crazy with the lip gloss. I had a strawberry stomachache the size of Texas. I held my tummy as I walked out to the bus lane, but instead of my bus, I found Mom waiting for me. Maggie, over here! I walked slowly, trying to decide how many miles long I should make this guilt trip. Her eyes were filled with apologies. I'm so sorry, honey. I tried to make it, I really did. And then the dryer broke, and I had 20 guests with no clean towels, and it was a mess. And I am just so sorry. It's okay, I guess, I shrugged. I'll be student of the month at least 6 more times, maybe even 7. She exhaled with relief. Well, I have to make it up to you. Want to go to the mall? She must have forgotten who she was talking to. No, I said with absolute conviction. Want to go to Dairy Queen? Yes, I said with even more absolute conviction. I ordered my usual peanut butter cup blizzard, and Mom ordered the same, which was weird because I wasn't sure we'd ever have anything in common again. Every time I let myself trust her, she betrayed me. Well, maybe it wasn't as extreme as betrayal. She wasn't Benedict Arnold or anything, but she did let me down more than once, and I couldn't forget it, and a blizzard wouldn't fix it, but maybe 2 or 3 blizzards down the line would. I searched the bottom of my cup for more candy in a silence so cold I got an all over freeze, not just a brain one. Maggie, I hope you can forgive me. I know I messed up, but I promise to never break another promise again. She looked defeated. Oh, I can't promise that. I'm not perfect, Maggie, not even close. That wasn't what I wanted to hear. So, what do you promise? I promise to try harder. She thought for a second. And I promise to never. Hey, are you wearing lip gloss? I pulled my lips into my mouth. No, ma'am. I could tell she didn't believe me, but she let me get away with lying for some reason. She hugged me close to her side as we walked toward the car, and I liked that for once. I was the one who couldn't be trusted.